Recently, in a congregational Bible study, I had a whiteboard and I analyzed the following verse on a whiteboard. And let's go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. Those of you that heard that, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. I don't know a lot of Hebrew, but I do know some, and I have studied it some. I'm not an expert at it, don't claim to be, probably never will be. But I do, on occasion, read and study certain things. I have a Sonsino commentary, which goes back for decades, that I've really enjoyed, because the Hebrew language is very expressive. And if you doubt that, just go to a Jewish synagogue sometime and get in conversation with them and talk with them. But in Genesis 1:1, it says, "In a beginning," and I will tell you the words here as we go through this. "In a beginning, God, Elohim, created bara," which means out of nothing, shamayim, the heavens and the earth. So you would say, Elohim bara shamayim. Okay, that's very impressive, right? But that says a lot, that Elohim created out of absolutely nothing everything that's above and below. Completely. But what's interesting, what I want to focus on is Elohim. If you break that down, you may have heard this, maybe you didn't, but Elohim, El means what? Strong. Okay? El Shaddai. It means strong. Eloh, if I were to draw that, the next part, Elo, means what? Faithful, or to have faith in a context can be. And then the complete word, we know this, Elohim means what? Family. So if you have that word and look at it, what does it mean? Strong, faithful, family. Interesting, don't you think? That it would say a strong, faithful family created out of nothing everything. The subject of this sermon is a fundamental concept of life and the plan of God that was from the beginning. When was the beginning? We all have a beginning, but God says without beginning or end. He's always been. That's what that YHVH, the Tetragrammaton, the eternal one, has always been. That can't be. He had to start somewhere. But he didn't. And he's not going to end. And we have part of that, as we'll see in the sermon today. We had a beginning, but if we stay faithful and follow God and grow and learn and all the things that we know to do and live and be part of and let Christ live in us, what's going to happen? We don't have to have an end. That's pretty exciting. And I don't mean an end with these bodies that we have now, that some try so desperately to hang on to. But the plan of God from the beginning has been what? A strong, faithful family. God the Father and the Word desired a family. There's a famous song, and I'm not going to sing it for you, although part of me sometimes really wants to, especially when I'm on a boat fishing, right, Bill? Sister Sledge, you all remember that name? It was composed by Bernard Edwards and Nile Rodgers. I did not write this. I did not think this up. The famous song by Sister Sledge, "We Are Family." Rodgers and Edwards offered the song to Atlantic Records. The record label initially declined. The track was released as a single from the album of the same name and quickly began to gain a following and a lot of club and radio playing. "We Are Family" eventually went gold, becoming the number one R&B. If you don't know what R&B is, then we're in trouble with the whole sermon. And number 2 pop song in the U.S. charts in 1979. It seems like yesterday, doesn't it? Yeah, Paul's over here singing it. I can hear. Yeah, right. It reached number 1 on the disco charts. If you don't know what disco is, you're also missed out on it. Wonderful, right? I won't do that. Okay. How many of you remember the big balls that went around, in the I had one of those shirts, that fabric, I'm not sure what it was. It just kind of glistened. You still have one of those, don't you? Yeah, don't wear it. Okay, not the truth. All right, no. It was also the theme song for the 1979 Pittsburgh Pirates. Now you're like, why are you stuck in the 70s? Well, there's reasons for that. It was featured in both 1996 film The Birdcage, which Robin Williams and I think Nathan Lane was, and the 1997 film The Full Monty. The words went like this. Again, I'm not going to sing it for you. Some of you would love me to sing this, and maybe in a different place, but this isn't the place to do it. We are family. I got all my sisters with me. You know this song, right, Miss Ellen? All right. Don't you stand up and start singing. Okay, all right. We are family. Get up, everybody, and sing. We are family. I got all my sisters with me. We are family. Get up, everybody, and sing. One thing you'll notice about most songs, they don't require a lot of intellectual ability to remember the words, right? Sometimes they do. But sometimes they don't. Everyone can see we're together as we walk on by. Hey, and we fly like birds of a feather. I won't tell no lie. All of the people around us, they say, can they be that close? Let me state for the record, we're giving love in a family dose. We are family. I got all my sisters with me. We are family. Get up everybody and sing. We are family. I got all my sisters with me. We are family. Get up everybody and sing. Living life is fun, and we've just begun to get our share of the world's delights. High hopes we have for the future and our goal in sight. No, we don't get depressed because there's what we can call our golden rule. Have faith in you and the things you do. You won't go wrong. This is our family jewel. We are family. I got all my sisters with me. We are family. Get up, everybody, sing. We're family. I got all my sisters with me. Get up, everybody, and sing. We are family. Now, that's courtesy of Metro Lyrics. I didn't remember those, although I could. Right, Bill? I could remember if yeah. I have a knack for remembering songs and words, even when I try to forget them. But what is it that constitutes a family? Simple, right? What is one of the greatest things being dismantled very quickly in society today? How important is a family in the plan of God, and why? And why so much emphasis from God about family? At the feast, I believe, in Panama City Beach, you will have Family Day, right? I think they do. Most places do. We will have one in Cartagena. We will have a Family Day on the beach. The beautiful Caribbean Sea, hands down, much nicer than some seas. Not as nice as others, but it is pleasant. We don't always have air conditioning there at that hall during the feast either. So I'll reflect back on this in case it goes out. But understanding what God's perspective of a family can clearly help us know what we need to know to do and be a closer family. Webster's dictionary definition. Family. There's 4 explanations or definitions. The first one, a body of persons who live in one house and under one head or one household. Those descended from a common progenitor. So if we take that back far enough, we are family, period. Because we all have the same grandpa, right? And I don't mean the Ray Stevens, I am my own grandpa, but we have the same grandpa. His name started with an A and ended with an M, right? Another definition of family, a group of closely related individuals or groups. And then the fourth one, a group comprising immediate kindred, especially a group formed of parents and children. Now, there are 2 main factors that affect a family. They are heredity and environment. Those are the 2 major factors. If you don't think that heredity and environment affected you as a family, that made you who you are, well, go back and dig through the records and look at some pictures and interests and things that if your from your biological family, because I'm adopted, and sometimes that can change a little bit. There's some differences in there. But your environment. Why do we do what we do in the church? Have you ever thought about that? Why do we have 3 songs or 2 songs, opening prayer, sermonette, announcements, special music or another song, and then a sermon, or 2 split sermons, and then a song and a prayer? Why do we do that? You ever thought about that? It's in the Bible, you know. That's how you have church services. That's in the Bible. No, it's not in the Bible. It's not. Why do we do it? It's not a sin. It's not wrong. It's what we do. There are certain things that your environment, or if you're born in this, maybe hereditary, that it's just you, that's what mom and dad did, or so that's what we do. Heredity. Let's talk about heredity. Those descended from a common progenitor, a group of closely related individuals or groups, a group comprised of immediate kindred, formed of parents and children. Human families have what? You ever heard this saying, blood is thicker than water? Depends on how nasty the water is. I've seen some places where I wouldn't agree with that statement. But a common blood, right? A common blood. You ever had someone say, well, my blood relatives? Does that mean you all drank blood? Right? Or you all cut yourselves? No. Blood relatives. You've heard the saying, blood is thicker than water, and that's very common. Or people will say, instead of we are family, we're blood. Okay? That means to me, we're family in the statement of what they're saying. What about environment? A body of persons who live in one house under one head, a nuclear family, or nuclear rather. Is it nuclear or nuclear? That's always a fun one, right? Parents and their children living in one household. That is a very uncommon thing today. When I was growing up, it wasn't. But it has become very complicated today. And we see the effects of what that's created. Right? Being together, doing things together, being a close-knit family, right? Some of you, if I were to ask you when you were growing up, or what do you do now in your home, what do you do on most Sunday afternoons? You might say, it depends how the wind's blowing. Others may say, I married into a family like this, every Sunday, if possible, we do. And then for dinner, we have homemade pizza. Right? And I'm like, okay, we just hoped we had a meal on Sunday night. Or maybe it was this will date me, but maybe it was sitting around a radio to listen to some type of old-time radio. Or go a few years, maybe into the 60s, The Wonderful World of Disney. Right? Anybody watch that as a family? Maybe Sunday was the day Dad didn't have to work or Mom didn't have to work, so you did things together. And then as you got married and had your own family, and you sometimes can go back 3 and 4, 5, 6 families, it's like great-grandpa so-and-so and grandma did this. You never ask, why do we do this? This is what Garretts do or don't do, right? And then when you get married, that's the fun part, because you mix these two environments together, and you got to sort out what you're going to do in your kingdom. That's why it says a man shall leave his mother and father and cleave into his wife. They have your own new family. But you bring things in, and that's where the learning process is, learning how to work together to decide what you're going to continue with and what you may not. Many families are widely separated by time and distance, sometimes by disagreements or conflict. It's no secret that, I know this as a pastor, you come to a funeral or a wedding. Oh boy, do you find out about environment and hereditary from family members. I'm not trying to be negative, but you never know what you're going to get into with the family of the deceased. You know, they may have loved Uncle George or Aunt Harriet. They may have not. Right? I remember one time being handed a note. The person said, I really can't come up and say anything about this individual, but I would like you to read my thoughts. Well, I figured, okay, I didn't read it ahead of time. And I was sitting there in my seat about 2 minutes before I had to do my part and stand up, and I looked at that and I read the first line. I said, I can't read this. So I quickly skimmed through it. I thought, there really isn't. So I just said, I just didn't read it. I said, I really can't read this. It was awful. It was obvious that person didn't have a good family relationship. They were separated. I know my children, my son and daughter live a long ways from us. And it's a good 2.5 days hard drive to get there. So we don't get to see them very often. If you've been part of a church for any number of years, you often hear this: we are a church family. What happens when some people don't like their family? How many of you growing up said, I don't like the family I'm part of, I'm leaving you, at 3 years old? Right? I don't like you. I don't like the parents I got picked. I want you. They get ice cream every night after dinner. We don't. I want that family. Right? Of course, we laugh, but then as you get older, it becomes more complicated. But what happens? People say, I don't like this family. I don't like my husband. I don't like my wife. I don't like your kids, and so I'm going to leave you. And the family is fractured. Now, is it just an analogy? I want to look at these two parts, heredity and environment, and focus for a few minutes. Hereditary, they descend from a common progenitor. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 3, verse 14. Ephesians 3, verse 14, for this reason I bow my knees to the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, from whom the whole family in heaven and earth is named. Father, the Greek pater, means originator, progenitor, protector, upholder. So when people say, oh, you don't need a father to have a normal, functioning, stable family, what does God say? What does God say? And then the family, the word patria, similar to that, means patriarch, the Greek transliteration of an Aramaic word meaning father. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 6 shows that God came from the south, because it says one God and Father who is above all, through all, and in y'all. No, that was supposed to be funny. But in you all. He's in all of us. Right? There's a sign driving up, some lawyer, I don't even know who it is, but the caption is, and it's very catchy, with his number, one call y'all. So you see that. And if you haven't lived in the South, you're not from here, that isn't funny, and people watching this, if they do, are going to say that didn't make sense, that wasn't funny. If you have Germanic background and live up north of the Mason-Dixon line, it's probably not funny, but then that's a generality, so maybe it is. There's different types of y'all, too, by the way, but that's a different subject. John chapter 1, we're reading from the New King James, verse 12, but as many who have received him, to them he gave, John 1:12, the right to become children of God, to those who believe in his name, who were born, brought forth, fathered, the Greek geneo, not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, or of the will of man, but of God. So we are children of God, brought forth by the will of God. If you want to know how God looks at us sometimes and why he's so incredibly patient, look at your children. How do you treat your children? Right? When they're a baby and they use the restroom in their diaper day after day, what do? I'm getting rid of you. Babies aren't supposed to do this. I always laugh when you have young people say, I'm getting married, but I'm never having children because I don't like children. And they list all the things they do. And you just silently kind of laugh because you think, okay, right? But what does God do with us when we spiritually do things, and we come back and say, I'm really sorry, please forgive me, and we repent. What does he say? I love you, my precious little child. Mothers and fathers, those that understand what being a family is, what do we learn with children? Right? You can have a trophy child that exceeds, conquers, achieves, does everything wonderfully until they don't. Right? What do you learn? You learn to be incredibly patient and forgiving. Right? And you think, I am so glad I never did anything like that. And then your mother one day reminds you, or father, remember the time? And you're like, oh, I did that. That's one of the nice things about Facebook, when they show pictures of people that did something 40 years ago. And this is what, little guy did here. Good or bad, or indifferent. We are children of God, brought forth by the will of God. A group of closely related individuals or groups is another definition. Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 17, again from the New Living Translation, Ephesians 2:17, he brought this good news of peace to you Gentiles who were far away from him, and peace to the Jews who were near. Now all of us can come to the Father through the same Holy Spirit because of what Christ has done for us. So now you Gentiles, or you nations, are no longer strangers and foreigners. You are citizens along with all of you, God's holy people. You are members of God's family. I remember when we first started to visit Latin America, a couple, 3 decades ago now. Oh, did we feel like foreigners and strangers. Remember when we first started to pastor Columbia, it was like that. It was like, my wife and I would say, we don't fit in here. And one day, finally, one of the older ladies came up to me and she said, you know what? And it meant the world to me. She said, your family. I thought, wow, it took that long. Right? You could be like that in a church congregation. You attend somewhere. I know this. When you come through one of these doors the first time, you've never been here, you don't know us, you're like checking it out. When a new pastor comes in, you think it's hard being here like that. Try coming in and you have to pastor these people that are like, right? And you just like, oh, they love me, right? You know, the first thing they say, I remember one time I came into an area and the person came up and said to me, oh, are you? They mentioned the pastor general of the church. I said, thanks for the compliment. Not really. And so it's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable. And you learn that what unites us is because we all like cream corn and biscuits or sweet tea. No, we don't. I don't like sweet tea. You all know that. Doesn't mean I'm not family, I hope. Right? Some of you don't like things I might like. Right? And so we are united near and far by what? Blood? No. Right? We're not. What are we united by? God's Spirit. We are made members of the family of God through that Spirit. It transcends everything. In the world tomorrow, the perfect language, whatever that pure language is, how many of you know what it's going to be? You know? We don't know. This is going to sound awful, but English is not the easiest language to learn. It is very complicated. When you try to translate into what I do to Spanish and the speakers come to the feast, it's like, honestly, right? Simple things like you cut down a tree and then you cut up the limbs. Translate that. Nothing easy, right? We have things like that doesn't translate. So If we're all one family in the world tomorrow, we all got to speak the same language, but what is it going to be? All right? What's the best way to cook a barbecue brisket? All right? What's the best way? Fill in. Well, my family does this. Well, my family does this. Well, the family members that came from this tribe, right, did this. Right? If you're from Alabama, you got your choices of football teams to follow. If you're from Nebraska, you don't mention where you're from come football time. Right? If you want to be part of family. And we joke, but some folks are pretty serious about that. 1 Corinthians 12, verse 12 to 14 in the New King James. For as the body is one and has many members, but all the members of that one body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ. For all by one Spirit we are baptized into one body, whether Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, have all been made to drink into one Spirit. For in fact the body is not one member, but many. Here's another translation. Here's another translation of 1 Corinthians 12, 12 to 14. For as the family is one and has many members, that one family being many are families, so also is Christ. We are baptized as one family into that. We have all been made to drink into one Spirit. For in fact, the family is not just one member, but many. You have a human family united by common blood, a spiritual family united by what? The Spirit of God via the blood of Jesus Christ. A group comprising immediate kindreds, another definition. A group formed of parents and children. What does Romans 8 verse 29 say? Romans 8 and verse 29, the New Living Translation again. It makes it clearer. For God knew his people in advance. He chose them to become like his Son, that his Son would be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. I am a firstborn in more ways than one. I have two families, a biological and adopted family, and I am the firstborn as far as I know in both. Christ was the firstborn of what? Many brethren. Brethren meaning brothers or sisters. When I write to Spanish and I write queridos hermanos, it means greetings, dear or dear brethren. Everyone, men, women, children, Lucases, Miss Ellens, right? It encompasses everybody. A community based on the identity or origin of life. 2 Peter 1. 2 Peter 1, verses 2 and 4. 2 Peter 1. Grace and peace, the Apostle Peter writes, grace and peace be multiplied to you in the knowledge of God and of Jesus our Lord, as his divine power has given us to all things that pertain to life and godliness through the knowledge of him who called us by glory and virtue, by which have been given us exceedingly great and precious promises, that through these you may be partakers of what? The divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. So that nature, that divine nature, it is different. Some of us really struggle because we're trying too hard to hold on to a different nature instead of partaking of what God wants in his family, a divine nature. Have you ever heard this? Like father, like son. Or maybe a different analogy, the apples don't fall far from the tree. You ever heard that? Right? I'm learning some of the sayings I use or grew up using don't make sense down here to some, but there's some sayings here that don't make sense from where I came from. Let me share one of those, a little bit of digression, because some of you are falling asleep. I want to wake you up. I called one of the elders here, it's been a few months ago, and I said, it was a Monday morning, I said, am I disturbing you at work? I need to chat for a minute. He said, no. I said, well, what are you doing this morning? He said, I'm just killing rats. Now, you all know where I'm going with this. But I said, you're killing rats. He said, yeah. I said, with what? He said, a shovel. And I said, where? He said, out in the warehouse. And I thought to myself, what a horrible job. Because I grew up in Nebraska. We used to go up into the loft where the hay was, and some of us would move the bales, and the others would, with a pitchfork and a shovel, kill rats, and then we'd throw them to the cats and the other animals, and the pigs would eat them too. Because if not, they overtook everything. It was a disease-carrying mess. We had or killed rats. Jerry Clower used to say, first of all, I come from Route 4, Liberty, Mississippi. We had rat killings. I'm lying, I'm dying. And I thought he killed rats. So it's several months later, I'm having a meeting, and I said, this is killing me. Did you really kill rats? He said, of course not. It's just a saying. I said, just a saying. You mind filling me in? He said, well, you might say putting out fires. I was a firefighter too, so we used to go with a little Indian on our back and go along, and we'd put out fires, things that were stirred up but just kind of ate up time and didn't really produce anything, but you went and put those out till you get to this. So he wasn't killing rats. He said, no, I wasn't killing rats. Well, you told me you was the shovel. That's just a saying. So sometimes there's things, you all get this. Most of you, some of you are like, I have no idea. This is not spiritual. What if you ask God, what were you doing today? Killing rats. He does things some days maybe that we might think, I don't know how I got onto that, but anyway. Environment. Let's talk about that. The body of persons who live in one house under one head or household. 1 Timothy 3:15. He writes to Timothy, Paul does, so that if I'm delayed, 1 Timothy 3:15, you will know how people must conduct themselves in the household of God. This is the church of the living God, which is the pillar and the foundation of the truth. Wow. There's a mouthful. There's a whole sermon or two in there. The word church, that household, Greek patria of God. That word house, oikos, O-I-K-O-S, the family consisting of those related by blood and marriage, as well as slaves and servants, living in the same house or homestead. That's from the Loneida Lexicon. Family. The thought is clearly that of a family group. The household of God is so large and scattered, brethren, we don't know most of our family. Now, we still know a lot, many of them. And what's interesting, I find still after almost 60 years, when I travel and I go into certain congregations I may have never been, inevitably someone comes up and says, hey, aren't you so-and-so? Yeah. Well, how are you? I haven't seen you in 50 years. I had that happen here the first couple Sabbaths I was here. A man said, wow, I knew you. Are you? Wow, yeah. Well, I knew you, and wow, that's a long time. They worked for a newspaper in Des Moines back in a long time ago. We're separated by time and distance, sometimes by disagreements, conflict, and corporate barriers. And I won't spend too much time on that. Like strangers because of what? Lack of contact. One of the things that's important about being together for church, you do what they say in the South, talk. Right? You talk. And you get to know each other, and you find out they're not really that bad a person after all. They're just different. Right? You learn that, wow. And that's why the Feast of Tabernacles I mentioned 2 weeks ago here. It's like a big family reunion. Right? Some of you that are going to the feast are looking forward to seeing certain people. Right? And being with certain people. There are some people that have been to Panama City every year since it's opened. And I've said, did you go anywhere else? No. Why not? I don't know. It's where you go, right? That's not bad. It's not wrong. Just to enjoy a new area for yourself or your human nuclear family? No, that's not the reason. This weekly Sabbath is a family reunion on a smaller scale. There are times, let me share this with you. There are times that if you can believe this, have difficult weeks. I don't just sit and drink coffee and stare out the window all week and wait for the phone to ring for someone to say, I love you. And I think, okay, who's going to be at church Sabbath? And my wife and I will discuss. I'll say, well, you know, they're going to be here, and they're going to be here, and I don't know if they'll be here, and who knows. But I know that these members of my family, not meaning possessive, but inclusive, all of us, they're going to be there. I knew that you were coming down from Georgia today, or coming for church. And there was much rejoicing when we knew the air was fixed. We knew they were coming. That's why we fixed it. It's going back after you leave. But I know that Lucas is going to be here. He's going to have at least one bruise on his head from falling somewhere. Yeah? All right? But I look forward to that. I look forward. I say, look, I only see them every couple of weeks. And then when we have guests, that's fun too, because you're like, wow. And you meet more people. Right? Part of that family. I look forward to that. I can be really tired sometimes and just really had a rough week, and I'm like, I get to be with my family Sabbath. They're going to be there. And then when somebody doesn't show up, it's tough, because you're like, oh. You ever eat growing up in a family and maybe one of the brothers or daughters wasn't at the meal for whatever, and it's like, where's Joe? Where's Mary Ann? Right? Where's Dad? Right? Where's the food? Where is everybody? We have family reunions on my mother's side. They just had one a couple weeks ago back in Iowa. You know, and as the older folks, some of them die and just can't make it anymore, and the younger, now there's this whole, I looked at this big picture, I'm like, I don't know 70% of these people. There was a time when I knew everyone. But you look forward to being with your family. The weekly Sabbath is like that on a smaller scale. Jesus foretold the time when all of God's family will be reunited. Can you imagine how excited he is? Are any of you excited to see your mom again? Or your relatives? Or maybe your children if you lost one? Or family members? You know the sad thing for me, it's on a physical level. It's not permanent. Is the number of brethren, as you get older, some of you know this, I can tell by looking at your hair color, people around you that were your friends and family and in the church, they start to die. And they go away, and you don't. Doesn't that change? And you look at the church and you say, what happened? You got to be careful. That can be really discouraging. Then I remind myself, God says, this isn't all there is. Right? We're going to see them again. Or the scattered of everybody everywhere. God's going to have to sort that out. I learned a long time ago, I am not big enough to fix that problem. Right? I bump into people traveling in Walmart that I haven't seen in 30, 40 years sometimes. What are you doing? You know, where do you, you're afraid to say, where do you attend church? Because some of them say, I don't. Or, you know, or sometimes they'll say, well, I'm from Defuniak. Oh, no, I'm kidding. I'm not that bad. But eventually God says what? This family, all the things we work through, what's the marriage supper going to be like? You ever thought about that? That's going to be pretty incredible. We tend to get caught, and our adversary helps beat us down with this, right? We tend to forget what God says about family. John 10:16. John 10:16. Other sheep I have which are not of this fold, them I must bring, and they will hear my voice, and there will be one flock and one shepherd. Why is the family important in God's plan, and what can we learn from the family unit? Number one, it teaches us the role, structure, and relationship that we have with God, Jesus Christ, and each other. I learned growing up, if I didn't like my family, too bad. Where was I going to go? Right? My dad used to say, go ahead, leave. He was joking with me. Go ahead and leave if it's that bad. But he said, eventually you'll come back. Because you know where you sleep and you know where you eat and you know who your family is. And I used to say, no, I'm not coming back. I'm leaving. 7 years old. I'm leaving. I'm out of here. I'm just going to go where it's better, where I don't have any. One guy said to me one time, I'm sick and tired of all the rules my parents give me, so I'm going to go join the military. God is our Father. What is a father's role in the family? Leader, provider, protector. The titles for God, literally Father, one who combines aspects of supernatural authority and care for his people. But you know what? If you've never had a father or a dysfunctional father that was abusive, when we say, you need to pray to God the Father, what do? You shut down because you don't have a good image of that. I know that. That's why some people are the way they are. Right? If you've had a perfect relationship with your dad, you can talk about it. It's wonderful. But if you haven't, it hurts. And you don't want to hear that God is our Father because you associate that with pain. And so there's a healing process that has to take place. Matthew 7:7. Matthew 7:7. Keep on asking, and you will receive what you ask for. This is a New Living Translation again. Keep on seeking, you will find. Keep on knocking, the door will be open. I remember this by writing on a board, ASK. Ask, seek, knock. Everyone who asks receives. Everyone who seeks finds. Everyone who knocks, the door will be open. Parents, if your children ask for a loaf of bread, you say, here, have a rock. Like the one we had yesterday that I picked up. We had the cast net, and I picked it up and threw it back in the water, toward the water. If your daughter or son says, can I have a piece of cinnamon raisin toast? Sure. Throw them a rock. Of course you wouldn't do that. Or if they ask you for a fish, you say, hang on, here you go. And you hold them up, right? Red and yellow killifellow. Nice snake for him. You say, here. If they ask for a fish. No, you don't do that. He said, if sinful people know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your heavenly Father give good gifts to those who ask him? I remember one time asking my dad for something, and he said, no. And then he said, what part of no is not clear? I said, but Dad, no, every day. He said, stop asking me. The answer is no. I said, well, God says if I ask and I seek and I knock, he'll give it to me. He said, I'm not God. I said, but I really want this. Finally, he sat me down. He said, why do you want this? And I explained why I wanted it. And he said, well, let me see what I can do. It's going to take a while. It's not a whole lot of money, but we didn't have much. So finally he said, here. I said, I knew you'd give it to me. He said, but don't think I'm a softie. But don't do this again. Sometimes what? God says what? That's where the word supplicate comes in. Do you know that? You just keep going back and back and back. Now, not too annoying, right? But you go to God, you say, Dad, I really would like this. You know, on the Day of Atonement every year I say, Father, please give me food tonight. And he always does. And by the end of the day, I'm like, I am really glad that you said we've got something to eat. Any of you like that, or am I the only one? Right? What if God said, no, I've changed the Day of Atonement with the Feast of Tabernacles. We're going to move it around. And the Day of Atonement is going to be 7 days of fasting, and the Feast of Tabernacles is going to be 1 day. Boy, would that not be very fun, right? I'm glad God knows what he's doing. Right? Jesus Christ is our elder brother. What is an older brother's role in the family? To protect the younger siblings as a role model. Any of you that have maybe an older brother or sister, your parents said, Watch what they do. That's what I want you to be like or do. And maybe you got tired of hearing, oh, I got to be like, right? But that's what they said. What are we supposed to do? What's our older brother? Jesus Christ. He's also our friend, our high priest, soon coming king, Lord and master. But it says our elder brother. We hear that in prayers. So we're supposed to, he'll protect us, right? Any of you has older brothers or sisters ever do that to your siblings? Maybe you were in a bad way, or as George Clooney would say, you were in a tight spot, right? And what happened? The big brother or big sister came in. I remember, this is going to date me. You remember Happy Days? Anybody remember Happy Days? The Fonz always came in and saved everything. I looked at him the other day. I'm like, that was the most ridiculous show I've ever seen in my life. But back then, it made sense. He would come in and save Richie's bacon, beef bacon, all the time, right? Hey, whatever he did, I don't remember. John 14:13 says, whatsoever you ask in my name, I will do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you ask anything in my name, and you need to add according to his will, and if it's good for you, I will do it. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 13, until we all arrive at full manhood at the standard of maturity set by the Messiah's perfection. What God says is perfect. Number 2, families work together and play together. Generations ago, families worked together on farms and home-based craft industries. Unfortunately, a lot of that doesn't take place anymore. I can't tell you how many times I would hear people say, after the sundown, after sunset tonight, the whole family has to go home after church, after sunset, and we've got all these chores to do on the farm. There wasn't, I'm not doing it because I have a date with my Facebook friend, or whatever it is. It's what you did. Families work together. We used to have, before the days of unleavened bread, the de-leavening of the house together, right? Or we're going to do yard work together, right? Or we're all going to help mom make dinner together. I owned several companies, my wife and I did over the years. Our family at one point all worked together. How did that go? Sometimes really good, sometimes not good, right? My wife and I learned, I love her dearly, but we learned that there are some things we don't do together. We do not hang drywall together. We do not strip wallpaper off together. When she wants to fix the washing machine, I don't help her. Right? You learn as a family. If you got smart, you figured out in a family, brother or sister does really good at this, and I'm better at this. And you learned that. And dad was better at this, and mom was better. What did you learn? So why was that helpful? Because later when you worked for a company, you said, I can do this really well, and he's really good at that, and she's really good at this, and I'm not fighting because I want that job and this and complaining. I'm happy, and we work together, and it gets done. You learn that growing up, if the family's functional, to work together. In the Jewish tradition, all fathers teach their children how to make a living. We did that with our children. We said, you may never want to do this permanently, but here's how to do it. And we trained them so they could do it. And my son said to me, how much notice do I have to give you before I quit? And I said, well, normally it's 2 weeks, but in your case, you're my son. You've really done well, and you've tried hard, and I can tell you hate this, so now is good enough. He said, you have been notified. I quit. And the next day, he was in a suit going to get a job, and he got it, doing something else. He did not want to do what I did at that point. And I get that. But he knows how to do it. And he'll never starve to death unless he's lazy. But Jewish people will do that. What they teach the families to work together. John 5:17, one of my favorite verses. Jesus answered to those asking, he said, my Father has been working until now, and I have been working. God the Father and Jesus Christ work together. They don't work separately. Right? That reflection right there is knocking me out. It must be wow. I'm going to have to, if we can put anything in front of it, I don't know. Maybe not. You're going to stand, go this way. More, this way. Right there, perfect. Thank you. Wow. I'm getting this sunspot in my right eye. You ever do these, stare into a bright light? This whole right side is turned. Thank you. If you get tired, you can move the tree over or something. All right. Luke chapter 2, verse 43. Lucas, you can help him. That'll block the lower one. All right. Luke 2, 43 to 49. When they had finished the days and they returned, the boy Jesus lingered behind in Jerusalem, and Joseph and his mother didn't know it. But they supposed him to have been in the company. They went a day's journey, and they sought him among their relatives and acquaintances. They said, "Have you seen Jesus?" Some people would freak out today. "Ah, where is he? Where'd he go? Where'd he go?" 911, Amber Alert. He's in the living room, right? You got to have him, protect him constantly. Yes, I understand. You need to be careful, right? I heard of a mother the other day. Can you believe this? That from the kitchen, doing dishes, let her child play in the sandbox unsupervised at 5 years old. Can you believe it? Things have changed in this world, have they not? Now, it depends on where you live and where you are, and right? Of course, I'm not making light of that, but we have become very, very, different on some things. So Jesus, they couldn't find him. After that, 3 days. Oh my, 3 days. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the teachers, listening and asking questions. And all who heard him were astonished at his understanding. When they saw him, they were amazed, and his mother said to him, "Why have you done this to us?" Right? "Your father and I have sought you anxiously." You got to read this as a mother, right? Any mother, 3 days. And he said to them, "Why did you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business?" Was he being a smart aleck? No. He was just telling him, "I don't think you completely understand this yet, what's going on. And I have a responsibility to do." Right? Translate it. Where have you been? Right? God has called us to join him and our elder brother Jesus Christ in doing his work. We need to be about our Father's business. We have a part in that. We do. We have a part in that. Andrew's learning how to be a part of that. Some of you were thinking, the poor guy, it's his second time leading songs today. He's learning, right? That had to be nerve-wracking. I'm sorry. I had to be nerve-wracking when the flute and the music all got out of... I was just, "Father, help him," You handled it really better than I would have. I would have just said, "I'm out of here. I'm done." Part of being a family, sometimes they say, "Can you do this?" And you're like, me? Right? Me? I overheard a conversation back here. "You're going to work in ushering again, right?" That's fun. Ushering is an incredible opportunity to meet different people. Right? Isn't it? Ushering's fun. Yeah, but you're going to have to ask people to move to the middle and help them find seats when they come in late and ask them to sit in the front when they don't want to. Right? Sometimes being part of a family, you're asked to do things maybe you never thought you could do. I'm sure you never thought you were going to be asked to lead songs, did you? Not that, right, okay. Don't worry, it only gets worse. Family members love and care for each other. 1 Corinthians 12:24. God has blended together the body, giving greater honor to the lesser member. 1 Corinthians 12:24. There may be no division in the body, but the members may have mutual concern one for another. If one member suffers, everyone suffers with it. If a member is honored, all rejoice with it. Now you are Christ's body, part of the family. Each of you is a member of it. Ecclesiastes 4 and verse 9. Another one of my scriptures that I appreciate. 2 people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. Again, to the New Living Translation. If one person fails or falls, the other can reach out and help. Right? But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. You ever been stuck trying to do something, it's just you and you can't do it? You need one more hand, right? You're trying to hold a flashlight with your teeth and, you're trying to do all these things, you just can't do it. Two people lying close together can keep each other warm. But how can one be warm alone? Try that. You move over here, then you move over here, right? Then you move over here, and that works. And moving back and forth, you warm up. How many of you remember the band Three Dog Night? They sang Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog and Joy to the World and Black and White, a few other songs. What's a Three Dog Night? Anybody know? Okay, I can tell you what it is. I grew up in very cold climate. If you're running a dog sled and you're mushing and you have a really cold night, it's 10 below zero out, normal night. You sleep with one dog to keep warm. If it's 25 below, you sleep with two dogs. And if you might die, you sleep with three dogs, and you might make it through the night. So how cold is a 3-dog night? Really cold, right? Now you learned something today. It was absolutely, totally useless trivia, right? Because you're not going to move out of Florida or Georgia or wherever you're from. But we learned that what? How can one be warm alone? A person, verse 12, standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. Three are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. John 13:34. Now I'm giving you a new commandment. Love each other. Just as I have loved you, you should love each other. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my students. In your family, your physical family, did you always love your brothers and sisters and mom and dad? No matter what? Yeah. Did they do some really stupid things and make you really mad sometimes? Were there times where you said, oh my, right? Did you ever tell somebody, I don't love you anymore? Right? And you're thinking, I didn't mean that. Right? What does God say about us? When you sin, I don't love you anymore, so I'm going to get rid of you. No. He says what? God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, right? That none should perish, that all should have everlasting life. So God says, move away and see if it's better. Nope. Okay. I'll have to remember that. Maybe it'll only be this day for this time, and then it'll not be there again. God says he loves us. He doesn't love the sin, but he loves us. Number 4, family members are potential heirs of family wealth. This can be very meaningful to any of us personally. Perhaps when we lose a father or mother, we often inherit all of their tangible personal property. Not always much wealth, but very meaningful, memorable items. Do you ever have something that they say, this was your dad's or this was your mom's, and you're like, oh, wow. And you remember that. Whatever it was. Maybe it was a cake bowl mixer. Right? And other people that don't know your mom or know you or know how you used to make cakes together say, I can go to Walmart or Dollar Tree or Dollar Store and get that. Why would you want that? Right? Or you have something of value you remember. It may not just be worth a lot, but it's worth to you the memories it brings back. Romans chapter 8, verse 14. Romans 8, verse 14, the New Revised Standard says, for all who are led by the Spirit of God are children of God. For you did not receive a spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but have received a spirit of adoption. We cry, Abba, Father. Which literally means, oh, Dad, oh, Daddy, right? Some of the little kids will say, Daddy, 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 oh, Daddy, 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 right? Right? It's that very Spirit bearing witness with our spirit that we are the children of God. And if children, then heirs, heirs of God, and joint heirs with Christ. If in fact, it says, verse 17, if we suffer with him, we may also be glorified with him. So the greatest time of family blessings, what? Lies yet ahead. But some people say, I don't care about that. I'm going to give it up now. 1 John 3:1. 1 John 3:1. See how very much our Father loves us, for he calls us his children, and that is what we are. But the people who belong to this world don't recognize we are God's children because they don't know him. Dear friends, we are already God's children, but he has not yet shown us what we will be like when Christ appears. We know that we will be like him, for we will see him as he really is. How is that exactly? I don't know. Some have tried to explain that. Some have been alienated by and had to forsake human families to enter God's family. You know that? Some of you have been through that. You've had to leave your physical family because they think you've lost it. In some cases they say, you go to that church, that crazy group, and I will never talk to you again. And some of them don't. God knows we need the close-knit fellowship of a family. Brothers, sisters, mothers, children, grandchildren, aunts, and uncles. Spiritually, it's the same thing. We used to have, many years ago, little kids, we had a flock of them in some of the congregations, would come up and say, well, you can go with Uncle Scott. And they'd say, is he, and I would do that with my children. I said, well, you can go with Uncle so-and-so. And they'd say, is that a real uncle or a church uncle? And I'd say, it's a church uncle. Oh, okay. But why do you call him uncle? I said, because we're a family, right? We're a family. Mark 10:28. Peter began to say to him, see, we have all left all and followed you. So Jesus answered and said, assuredly I say to you, there is no one who has left house or brother, sisters, father or mother, wife or children, or lands for my sake in the Gospels, who will not receive 100-fold now in this time. Houses and brothers and sisters, mothers and children and lands with persecution. And in this age to come, eternal life. Do we look at it that way? Do we look at it that way? I can tell you this, because living apart from my physical family so far, and my wife's, you are even more so our family. You may think, what do we do on the 4th of July? Well, we go with family, right? You know what we do? We sit and say, boy, it'd be nice if somebody invite us over. You may think, really? The night to be much observed, as used to be when we were back in the States, was always interesting. Everybody would be invited everywhere. And it's like, I would make this announcement. If you haven't been invited somewhere, please see so-and-so. And I would say, I'm seeing you. What? You haven't been invited anywhere? Right? So we keep that in perspective. Remember, we're family. Right? Some people spend so much time with their physical families, they don't really spend much time with this family. There's a balance. Right? Acts chapter 17, verse 26. We're getting there. Acts 17, 26. He has made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, and has determined their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwellings, so that they should seek the Lord in the hope that they might grope for him and find him, though he is not far from each of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as some of your own poets have said, for we are also his offspring. All mankind of all ages is literally one family. This is what's so weird when people get so upset and talk about the things dealing with racism. We're all part of the same family. Seriously. We forget that. Right? They talked about Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah. But Adam and Eve were the progenitors of what? Everybody. because we're all from one blood, from Adam and Noah. All reside on the same earth, the brotherhood of man. That offspring, that Greek genos, means gender or generations. We are looking forward to a time when all mankind will be one family, spiritually, after Jesus Christ returns. James chapter 1, verse 17. James chapter 1, verse 17, the final scripture. James 1:17. Every good gift, every perfect gift is from above, and comes down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow of turning. Of his own will he brought us forth by the word of truth, that we might be what? A kind of first fruits of his creatures, or his creation. We have got to do all we can to make the family of God today a very close-knit group. We can't keep going on saying, well, I'm this and you're there, and I'm a sheep and you're a goat. I'm the family member that Daddy likes and you aren't. That's crazy making, right? What does God look to? We have the common bond of God's Spirit. We need to take advantage of every opportunity to get to know our family better and look forward to the greatest family reunion of all time, the first resurrection. What's it going to be like in the second resurrection when all these billions of people come up and you start saying, you're part of the family? And you start to teach them and help them, and they say, wow, I've never had a family. I don't know what a family is. I don't have any idea. I didn't know. I've never had one. To God's plan to continue to enlarge his family, understand from the meaning of the holy days that remind us the overall details of God's great family plan. So we are family, God's family. And ultimately, all will have the opportunity to be part of that family, the family of God.